New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
I am so glad you're here. Welcome to Who Do You Think You Are? A podcast to help you learn how to have the highest regard for yourself, how to live from a place of self-respect and self-love, and how to make yourself a priority in your own life. Meet me here each week for curated tips and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological masks, or at least loosen them a bit, connect with your truest essence, and simply live more easily. Because we know that when we do these things, we naturally have more room, more generosity, and more love for others. And not only is that a beautiful thing, dear listeners, but when have we needed that more than now? We are getting together tonight, January 19th, on the eve of a momentous occasion. No matter how you feel about it, it is that. And, gosh, with so many things going on in the world, it may feel as though light is not making a comeback, or is anywhere to be found for that matter. I know because, like you, I've looked under all the rocks. We have fires. We have hostages. Thankfully, mercifully, gloriously, some are coming home, but not all. There are school shootings and mass shootings. There are, people, family members, Americans pitted against one another. You name it. To quote a famous author and a favorite author of mine, Anne Lamott, hell in a handbasket were the good old days. And to quote another favorite person of mine, comedian Wanda Sykes, we're about getting ready to meet Jesus. That's how it can seem to us. Truly, the word unprecedented was created for these times, I think, and I believe it should be in uppercase whenever it makes an appearance. These days feel truly unprecedented. So, I try to have my podcast episodes be relevant. And when I sat down to write my newsletter last night, and this podcast is connected to the newsletter that I write, comes out every Sunday morning. But it didn't come out this morning because, frankly, in all honesty, I was hard-pressed for what to write about. Sure, I had interesting psychological topics, spiritual topics. And while important, I have to say nothing felt quite right in my heart. They felt like, well, those are nice, but so what? Given this week, this night, they felt too out of step for where things stand, I thought. So I asked myself, gosh, when you have nothing to write about in that vein, what do you do? So I looked into my heart and I found myself saying, gee, I hope this and I hope that. I hope things get better. I hope things improve. I hope people are okay. And that led me down this path of wondering what hope is. So I was thinking deeply about hope in general and in particular my own hope. And it occurred to me actually what hope is not. Hope is not a fluffy kind of pink paint, everything's going to be okay kind of emotion. I don't think. I think it's more a gritty, stubborn determination to keep going forward even when the road seems uncertain, especially when the road seems uncertain. So the title of tonight's episode is Hope and Other Stubborn Qualities. Because it occurred to me that hope is just that. Hope is a relentless stubbornness against giving in to the darkness. Not easy, I don't think, but I believe possible. You know, it's easy to have hope when everything is mapped out for us, isn't it? When we know where we're going. It reminds me of being in an IKEA store, right? And, you know, the floor plan is clearly marked with those yellow arrows, and you know where you're going. You know, if you need a sofa, you're going to end up in the furniture department. If you need housewares, those arrows are going to wind around and you're going to end up in the housewares department. Things are easy when you know the way. But we don't need hope then, do we? We need hope when we don't have any. We need hope when we don't have any. And I know that for many, it can feel elusive. We can find ourselves wondering if things will ever get better. Many of us have turned off the television sets. Maybe we stopped reading current events because we just can't let that darkness in. And so we're kind of retreating or hibernating. Maybe we're waiting for other people to make it better. Somebody has to do something, don't they? Somebody has to save us. Or do they? So the question becomes, when we don't have hope, when we don't have the arrows on the floor pointing us to our certain destination, what do we do? Where do we find it? Well, I think in a pinch, we find it in the smallest, most ordinary moments. A beautiful sunset, a good cup of coffee. I'll tell you, in my life, my partner and I, when it comes to the weekend, especially Sunday mornings, that first cup of coffee, I'll tell you, that is almost a sacred experience. If you're listening and you have access to the chat, let me know how that is for you, if you enjoy your weekend cup of tea or cup of coffee. A kind word from a friend. These small joys can be powerful reminders that life is worth living. You know. Anne Lamott goes on to say, we can choose to be grateful for the smallest and the most ridiculous things. I love that. And that gratitude can be the bridge that carries us over the abyss of despair. Think about that. How many of us need a bridge over the abyss of despair? I know I do. So I'd like to offer a few practices that come to my mind, and I'd love to hear from you if you have ideas on how you find hope. Because I'll tell you, hope isn't only something that we find, I mean, we can if we want to, if we look for it. It's something that I think we can cultivate. But it doesn't happen without us. It doesn't happen without our attention and, more importantly, our intention. It takes both to cultivate hope. And I think when we're willing to cultivate hope, we find it. You know, if you've been listening to this podcast, you've heard me say many times, we have to take the aerial view. You know, we have to go up at however many thousands of feet it is, 28, 30,000 feet, and look at what we're doing. Because hope is not going to unfold without us actively intending to bring it about. So I'm going to offer some practices that can help us find, if not cultivate, hope using this aerial view. But before I do that, I see a few things in the chat. So I'm going to just move over here, put my glasses on, and see. From Dawn, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Dr. Martin Luther King emphasized the importance of maintaining hope despite temporary setbacks. That's worth reading again. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. He emphasized, Dr. Martin Luther King, he emphasized the importance of maintaining hope despite temporary obstacles. That's the dream, isn't it? But it's not just, a twilighty dream, a wish upon a star. I mean, we only have to look to Martin Luther King to see dream in action, to see hope in action. Put one foot in front of the other and cross those bridges. Cross those bridges. So people of these luminaries and these deep thinkers all talk about the bridge over the divide, over the abyss, the bridge that divides us from one another. But we have to think about the possibility, and we have to believe and trust in possibility. And why not? Possibility is created, as is other things. Everything I mentioned, the fire, the hostages, everything, the TikTok, the shootings, everything. Were those not created? Are those not being maintained? Likewise, love in action, hope in action is something we create, and it is within our power, I believe. Let me know if you believe this as well. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for that. On the eve of the day on which we celebrate Dr. King's birthday, it's a day of service. It's a day of service. Okay, that says it all. It is a day of giving of ourselves to others, stepping up, stepping forward, reaching out with our hands to another. So tomorrow is a very poignant day, is it not? And no matter which side of the political coin you come down on, it is also a day of giving. So Dawn, thank you for that remembrance. Janine, welcome. Unprecedented. That word from your newsletter, thank you for reading it, Janine, is exactly the mood for the moment. We have each other. Find our respective tribes and take comfort in each other. That's it. That's it. This is not the time to isolate. I know many people are in pain about the things I mentioned about the events going on right now, simultaneously, no less. Simultaneously. Come on. Any one of these things could bring us to our knees, but these things are going on at the same time. Compassion fatigue, trauma fatigue, of course. And we may need to, and as a therapist, I recommend this to my clients at times. You know, it's okay to turn off the television. It's okay to go inward, but do it temporarily. Why? Because if we abandon our voice, if we abdicate our power, no matter what it is, politics, injustice, people feeling unsafe, people going hungry, people feeling lost, people feeling alone, no matter what that is, we can extend a hand. So it's okay to go inward, but remember to come back out. And if you have to do that in doses, then do it in doses. But I want to invite all of you listening, and it's a reminder to myself as well. As I go in and out, I have to attend my own podcast, attend my own lecture, if you will, and do these things myself, come in and come out. That's part of being a dynamic human being, I believe. So Janine, you're absolutely right. Find your tribe. Create a garden in which you feel safe, in which you feel heard, in which you feel acknowledged and safe. And from that place of comfort and safety, we can then begin to re-venture out. So thank you, tribe. Still Bill is with us. Still Bill, who promised a couple of episodes ago. I get such a kick out of this, Bill. Bill promised, his promise to himself was to tune into this podcast every week, and he's been doing just that. I'm going to reach over so I can see the screen. The Hagen Family Christmas coming next Saturday. All is well with my soul. All is well with my soul. I'm glad, Bill. I'm glad. Patricia, welcome, Patricia. We have to stay hopeful. The alternative is despair. It is that. We can't despair if we intend to do the work that needs to be done to change things. So true. So true. You know, when you think about every radical change for the better that's happened in this country, you know, when you think about social injustices, I mean, how many people had to suffer? How many people had to probably dip into despair? How many people gave their lives? Gave their lives? How many people didn't give their lives, but they carry the scars of being beaten up, literally, figuratively, in so many ways, right? But they didn't despair. And if they did, they came out of it. Because with attention and intention, and from that aerial view as we watch ourselves go in, we can usher ourselves back out. Because as human beings, we have movement, we have agency. So, as Janine says, yellow arrows, yellow brick road, yellow brick road. Well, a reference to the Wizard of Oz and to Wicked. I learned a new word this week. I saw Wicked. I was a little late to the party, but I saw it. My goodness. So my new word is moodified. Moodified. I have been very moodified with all of this. But the yellow brick road brings you where there's no wizard. There's no one who has the answers. You know, the heart, the brain, the courage lives within us. So hope is not wishing upon a star. I hope, I hope, I hope. Hope really is trusting in our capabilities. Hope is trusting in our own resilience, the choice of resilience. I choose to find my way back. I choose to walk along that road with my ruby slippers that says everything I needed was in my own backyard the whole time. Choice. Choice. Not easy, but gritty. Stubborn. I refuse to give in. I refuse to be complacent. I refuse to let others destroy things, and I refuse to leave it to others to make things better. It's up to me. So, hope. I think there's more comments. Hope lights the way and pulls us toward the desired outcome. The suffragettes. Absolutely. The suffragettes. Yeah. Yeah. If you have the opportunity, if you live anywhere near New York and you have the opportunity to see a Broadway show, it'll probably cost you a small fortune. But you can get discount tickets. I really recommend seeing the Broadway show, Suffs, because it tells the story and depicts the journey of women before we had the right to vote. Oh boy, what a difficult road. But they didn't give up. They were beaten and battered and tattered, and they did not give up because they believed. And when I say believed, I mean they knew in their own resilience and in their own grit and their own stubborn refusal to give up. So, yes, suffragettes, civil rights movement. And of course, thank you for bringing this up, Dawn, the audacity of hope. Audacity, what a beautiful word, audacity. If someone can look that up in the chat, if I can trouble you to look it up and give the exact definition, but we know the energy on audacity, to be audacious enough to not give up. If somebody has that definition. 3, 2, 1. Audacity. If not, I'll look it up during the break. Oh, the break. It's time. So let's take a few minutes. Let's digest all of this. Let's reflect on our own stubbornness, good stubbornness, wonderful stubbornness, the stubbornness of possibility. Let's take a break. And when we come back, I'll talk about those few things that I think we can do to cultivate hope. And as always, I'll answer. If there's time, I'll answer a question or two. So you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are on New Thought Media Network. Stay with me.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm Catherine Duca, your host, and we are talking tonight about hope, in particular, the stubbornness of hope. The title of this podcast is called Hope and Other Stubborn Qualities. We're talking about what hope is not. It is not wishful thinking or wistful thinking. It is not wishing upon a star. It is not leaving the responsibility to improve things to other people. Hope comes from within. It is a deep, deep motivation that I believe springs from the knowledge that each of us has equal power. Each of us has equal power. Now, some would say that the powers of darkness these days are just better organized people. They're not innately more powerful. Each of us has the same exact power and potentiality. So it is on each of us, I believe, to actualize our potential, to actualize and put into action our sense of responsibility. Because person to person, we are equal in our voice. Now, some voices are louder, some voices screech, some voices speak in a whisper. So again, from that aerial view, we have the opportunity, I think, to ask ourselves, what are we doing with our voice? You know, moments when I, quite honestly, have retreated, when the news got too overwhelming and I went into myself. My voice was quiet, silent. And as I said earlier, sometimes that's necessary and it's perfectly okay, I think. But as I think Patricia said, we don't want to get stuck there. In our dynamism as human beings, we can exercise our choice. So let us be conscious of our voice. Are we using it to our capacity? Do we need to rest? The way a vocalist, perhaps when overusing her voice, needs to rest her voice in order to sing more powerfully, then let us do that. But we can't forget to come back. I'm just hesitating because I see something in the chat. I'll get to it in a moment. So these elements of hope, I think I'll go through them again. I touched on them, but I'll tie them together. Possibility, believing in the possibility, which is to say, knowing, embracing our knowing that our voice is no better, no worse, no weaker, no stronger than anyone else's voice. It's a matter of mobilizing with like-minded people if we're trying to accomplish something in society, and harnessing our own wish to use our voice. So, possibility, knowing we have that. Taking responsibility, as I mentioned, not abdicating our responsibility to others, to politicians. Oh, please. We know by now. We know by now. We know better. That was so 2000 and what? I don't know, but it certainly isn't today. Agility. We have to be agile. We can't be rigid. We can't be narrow. We can have conviction and stand on that, of course. But we need to be agile. We need to, I'm not a skier, but I know what skiers do, right? We all do. They kind of bob and weave, right? That's what we have to do. We have to be agile. We have to be flexible. We have to appreciate nuance. I talked last week about black or white, all or nothing, this or that, yes or no. That kind of thinking really doesn't cut it. And lastly, we have to look the reality of things in the eye. Now, we could have another conversation, I suppose, about how reality can be subjective. I can perceive something in one way and you can perceive it differently. So to that extent, there's a subjective nature. But, when Los Angeles is burning, come on, there's no debate. That's an objective occurrence. And when I say respect the reality of a situation, I mean, oh, this is so difficult, I know, but I mean not turning away. Because the people in that situation have no choice but to endure. They can't turn away. And as witnesses, as brothers and sisters, as fellow citizens, nor should we. So, possibility, responsibility, agility, and acknowledging the reality of things. We have to put this all together. And we have to figure out our own road. Okay, because it's not paved. It's not nicey nice. It's not IKEA. We have to figure it out. It's messy. We may, go off into the ditch or, ride the shoulder. I don't know. All the metaphors for it not being laid out for us. We have to, with our tribe, craft a path in front of us. We have to build that bridge across the abyss. And, there's no formula. Or there's no formula that I know of. If anyone knows of it, please raise your hand. It's something we have to be willing to, enter into the mess, the imprecision, the inaccuracy, the trial and error. Anything we have that's good, that came on the shoulders of those before us, came as a result of their figuring it out along the way. Equality, each of us has an equal say. Now, there are those who are trying to oppress. I'm not, that's another conversation. But inherently, we know each of us, right? Each of us is a soul having a human experience. And according to that that idea, that concept, that belief, that knowing, if you will, that's true. So, with that, let me take another glance at the comments here. And Dawn again. Dawn is saying, this is my own definition. Confidence, boldness, determination, resilience, and the belief in your own purpose and the willingness to put it into action despite the circumstances. Yeah, our own determination. No one can give us determination but ourselves. We can spark one another, and that's what being part of a tribe will do. You spark one another, support one another, uplift one another. You know? But no one can hand it to us. No one can be determined for us. No one can think for us, just as no one can breathe for us. Am I right? Do you agree? So we have to harness what we have inside, and we have to notice what we have inside. And so some of the things that we can do when we feel hopeless, and these things, I say them every week, they're not original. I'm not claiming that they are. I'm just pulling them out as threads that hopefully we can weave together and create something wonderful, something better. Go outside. Go outside. Yes, nature. Of course, nature connects us to something larger than ourselves. Nature connects us to a miracle. But when I'm feeling hopeless and darkish and very, very moodified, I go outside and I look at, depending on this, depending on what time of year it is, what season it is, I'll look at a blade of grass or a bud in the spring or a crocus, those things, or a dead leaf. And I say to myself, how did you know to do this, blade of grass? How did you know to do this? How did you know to rise up? How did you know to do it right on schedule? You were buried under snow. You were covered in ice. You were dormant, I don't know, dead-ish. But you rose as a beautiful green blade of grass, and you give off something, right? What does vegetation give off? There's a term for that. Somebody help me in the chat. Something with oxygen or something, right? But that blade of grass has a purpose. It is miraculous. And it does something for the atmosphere, which does something for us, helps us breathe. I forget the term. Synthesis, some kind of photosynthesis. I don't know, I could be way off. Mrs. Simonini from the 4th grade, if you're listening, sorry, I forgot. But you get the point. How do these things in nature innately know what to do? They rise from the freezing cold. The little blade comes up through the crack in the sidewalk. So when I look at the blade of grass, when I start to feel hopeful and I question, how the heck did that happen? And I say, okay, that's a miracle. I then am reminded that same blade of grass miracle, miraculousness, lives in me. It lives in me. All the miracles that must go on simultaneously to, have me talking to you, have my mouth work, my lungs work, sit in this chair, all the things. So we have to pay attention to these things. We have to notice the beauty in the world around us and notice the beauty in each of us. And notice and harness that we are love. We are love. And love in action is sharing our love with another and reminding another that they are love as well. One voice, equal voice. So pay attention to the small things, the blade of grass. Practice gratitude. I mean, this is every week I say this. Practice gratitude because we have so much. If you're breathing right now, you have a lot. You know, if you're here listening to me, if you can hear me, you have a lot. So sometimes when I work with clients and I suggest they do a gratitude practice, sometimes it's hard for them to think about what they feel grateful. They think they have to go big. I'm grateful for my house, grateful for my car. Yeah, of course. But it's even more fundamental than that. And these things are not to be taken for granted because they are miracles. So pay attention to the small things, practice gratitude. This is how we make that bridge. Reach out to others, tribe, connect with friends or family. Someone, I think Dawn said in the chat, she was referring to something that Janine said and so on. And I'm referring to something else that Patricia said from 2 weeks ago. And this is how, in this small way, on this Sunday night, maybe we make a little tribe here. And maybe we stay connected mentally, as I invite you to do at the end of each show. If we bring each of us with us mentally, kind of hold a little space. She was listening. She said that. She's thinking the same thing. She's trying to work through her despair, just as I am. Still Bill is here every week. He's doing. And the people who listen, in the future, they go on YouTube and they access the show and they listen who knows when. I think we're building a little bit of a tribe here. So, and Lamont also says, hope is the belief that we can get through the toughest of times and there will be beauty on the other side. And I believe if we cultivate it, we will find it because an open heart always does. An open heart always does. So with that, I think I'll take a question. 1 or 2 questions came in from the newsletter today. Let's see. This is interesting. From Kara. How can we balance the need for hope with the risk of false or toxic hope that is based on unrealistic or unattainable expectations? I'll read that again. How can we balance the need for hope with the risk of a false or toxic hope that is based on unrealistic or unattainable expectations? Well, balancing hope with realism requires a kind of critical thinking and a nuanced approach. This is so important, I think. I talked about this last week, but it's just, we have to incorporate these things in every conversation because they're building blocks. It's important to learn to grow more comfortable with ambiguity. And I think part of psychological maturity is to hold, we therapists call it the tension of the opposites. Hold the good and the bad, hold the light and the dark, hold, someone once called it, referred to it this way, hold the notes in the entire octave. the high notes and the low notes. So ambiguity is that gray and perhaps even contradictory ideas. And so we have to open up to that and kind of grow more at ease with not only gray, but with ambiguity. From that aerial view, I think it's important that we adopt a growth mindset and understand that nothing is really a still life. Everything moves. I'll use the word dynamic again. Everything moves and morphs and becomes something else. And if we add another ingredient to it, like our interest or our curiosity, and we lean into it, it then becomes something else, something we can work with, something we can massage. So getting comfortable with ambiguity, not getting freaked out by contradictions. Sometimes contradictions cancel each other out. Okay, this is another podcast episode. Everything I talk about, it seems, has its own drop-down menu. It can't possibly cover everything, but I guess that's what next week and next week and next week is for. So if you find yourself perhaps a little too stuck in rigidity, notice that and invite yourself to say, well, what's an alternate explanation for that? It looks like this to me. It can only be this. But I submit to you, there may be other explanations for things we don't quite understand. And so opening our minds to the possibility that there could be other ways of looking at something. That's another ingredient. So, Kara, I hope this helps. You know, there's a lot written and a lot talked about these days about toxic positivity. What is that? Toxic positive? You know, smiley, smiley. Everything is pink paint. Everything is good. All good. I'm good. All good. I'm fine. Silver lining and everything. Now, I think it is worthwhile to look for hidden treasures, hidden gifts. But toxic positivity, is when we kind of pour over the whole darn thing a smiley face. And that, you know, from this conversation and from your own thinking that doesn't really do it. That doesn't really stand up to the task at hand that we've been talking about here. So monitor, and I do this too. I consider myself a fairly flexible person, but I don't know, there might be others in my life who may disagree. I don't know, but I try. It's just my thing. I ask myself, am I being too rigid here? Am I being a little too stuck on my point? Am I being a little too wedded to being right? Sometimes, yeah, I'm sure. So it's the willingness to ask ourselves and the willingness to monitor that part of our mindset that I think can go a long way toward building this bridge over the abyss of despair. Glancing over at the comments, I see Janine writes, the snow outside tonight feels very purifying to me. The snow outside, yeah. Those of us who live in northern New Jersey are experiencing, I think, our very first snowstorm, several inches. Those listeners who, I know there are some people listening from Chicago and from Ohio, and they're laughing because several inches, we're supposed to get 7, is a dusting to you all. I understand that. No sympathy needed. We understand, but it feels purifying. It's quiet, isn't it, Janine? I was noticing that myself. It's quiet, it's peaceful, it's pretty, it's white. It's white. It's a blanket of quiet. I read recently, but I'm afraid I can't recapture it. So what good is that? But I read the scientific reason why it's quiet when we snow, something about the dampness tamping down something in the atmosphere. And so that quiet that we hear, that's another miracle. And so we can be like that snow, I guess, if we choose to. When we're worked up, when we're agitated, when we're angry. And, I make a case for being angry. There's constructive anger, healthy anger. As I said before, no injustice was ever reversed because people were zen. People were angry and outraged, but they channeled their outrage constructively. And sometimes in order to do that, we have to get still. We have to get quiet. We have to be the blanket of purifying snow to our minds so that we can step forward. So it absorbs. Oh, thank you, Bill. Bill has the answer. It absorbs CO2 and nitrogen and gives off oxygen. Bill, is that the blade of grass? It absorbs CO2 and nitrogen and gives off oxygen. I think that's the blade of grass. And boy, if I'm mistaken, man, science, not my long suit. Okay, we're having some fun here. So, dear listeners, with so much going on in the world, let's come together in a hopeful space, in a space of possibility. Let's focus this week on what we are capable of creating over time with conscious determination. Tap into our essence. Our essence is infinite. Tap into that consciously, deliberately, intentionally. Spark others to do the same. And let's live our lives both from 30,000 feet and at the level of the blade of grass, shall we? So I wish us all a hopeful week. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's such an honor. It really is to be in your earbuds, wherever you're listening from. You honor me. It's if you're listening live, it's Sunday night, close to 10 o'clock. And I always say, if you have some open tabs in your mind that are disturbing you tonight, I invite you to close those tabs just for tonight. You'll open them in the morning and deal with them then. But for tonight, give yourself permission to get a good night's sleep, knowing that you contain all the seeds of possibility in your spirit. And let's align our personalities with that infinite spirit. And let us go out into the world and build that bridge over the abyss that we may feel and many others may feel. I'll be thinking of you this week, and I look forward to being with you again next time. Thank you. I wish you a good night. You're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? Who you think you are is not necessarily who you really are. Who you really are is infinitely more magnificent than that. I hope as you listen to these episodes, you feel more and more of that, closer and closer to that. So I wish you well. You're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? Once again on New Thought Media Network. I wish you good night.